All right, hello and welcome to week 3 of Stanton University's Introduction to Public Administration course. Um, this week we're going to be talking about a number of different concepts here. We're going to start with a little bit of an exploration of United States federalism, which is going to lend itself to a bit of an understanding of intergovernmental relations. And we are also going to be touching upon non-governmental organizations um, and how they impact and how they operate in the context of a public administration setting. Um, so we're going to begin with federalism. Federalism is a structure of governmental authority in which power is ultimately divided between a central government, usually referred to as a federal government, and various regional states. Um, and when we talk about the word state, you'll notice we are the United States. So a state means any independent sovereign entity. So technically, that includes both the federal central government of the United States, so that's a state, but also, technically speaking, each of the 50 US states are also considered states. So to kind of give a little bit of context as to why this terminology exists and everything. So back when the United States was first formed, after the original 13 colonies declared independence from Great Britain back in 1776, the first formal government that it implemented was actually a confederacy under the Articles of Confederation, which were adopted back in 1777. And under that system, the original 13 states were a little bit more like nation states today in places, like the European Union, where there is a relatively weak central government and more power is in the hands of the individual states. And then, of course, a decade later, with the adoption of the Constitution, the central government played a much larger and more important role in the governance of the nation. So, what they found was that the Articles of Confederation led to too many problems. You had interstate conflicts, you had states printing their own currency, and, it just wasn't working out. So, they decided to go ahead and adopt the Constitution instead. So in any event, in the Constitution is this concept of having federalism, and under federalism, there is a concept of shared authority. So in the United States in particular, the central federal government, um, it's able to do things like make laws, levy taxes, enforce regulations, and do things like that. But so too do the 50 states, right? Um, so federalism is why, usage of certain drugs is legal in some states and a lot more restricted in others, or why there are limits or bans on abortions in one state where they're completely legal in others, right? Um, in areas where laws conflict, the federal government's laws and the Constitution ultimately take precedence. And that is a legal concept referred to as the Supremacy Clause of the Constitution. Okay? Now, in addition to state and federal uh, governmental bureaucracies, state constitutions also open the door for each of the 50 states to have local governmental powers as well, right? So as far as public administration goes, it means that we have a lot of different bureaucracies at play that we have to kind of account for, um, if we're talking about the way the government operates here in the United States, okay? So federalism means that we have both the federal government bureaucracy under the executive branch, which is headed by the President of the United States, but we also have state governmental bureaucracies sometimes tasked with similar and sometimes with dissimilar tasks that are generally going to be run by the governor of a state. And then also on top of that, to add to the complexity, we have local governmental bureaucracies. You have mayors, you have city managers, you have city councils that are usually going to be responsible for, having local governmental bureaucracies operating. That's not to mention special districts as well. You have school districts, you have special zones in place that have a variety of different functions. Things get a little bit complicated when we talk about United States bureaucracy in the context of federalism. And that's going to lead us to the next important concept in public administration, which of course is intergovernmental relations, right? So because we have all these different policies and programs in place, oftentimes policy issues overlap and different tiers of government have to find ways to cooperate, both on administrative as well as fiscal matters. Okay. So they have to work together to try to find ways of building infrastructure. They have to figure out ways to, adequately distribute funding, and then ultimately to deliver social programs, right? And of course, anytime you have different groups or different agencies working together, it's inevitably going to lead to some conflicts, disagreements over jurisdiction, opposing policy directions. That there are certain structured governmental frameworks and dispute resolution processes in place to kind of deal with this sort of thing. So you have like administrative adjudication procedures, administrative law. You have alternative dispute resolution processes in place. You have internal agency appeals, and I could put together an entire course just on administrative law. But it is important to note that, there exists this entire branch of, legal understanding and legal functions that are in place just to deal with the problems that happen between and among all the different governmental agencies. And then one more layer of complexity on top of all that, we have non-governmental organizations as well, also known as NGOs. And they're basically these non-profit, citizen-based groups that operate independently of any government, okay? And they engage in a wide variety of different functions. You have operational NGOs that provide direct services. Those are organizations like Doctors Without Borders that send medical professionals to areas where they might be lacking or there are some major public health crises or something happening. You have advocacy NGOs, which promote various causes and raise awareness on pressing issues, kind of like Amnesty International, any organization that's bringing attention to human rights violations or anything like that. Those are going to be advocacy NGOs. You've got community-based organizations that serve specific communities or specific neighborhoods. Good example of that, since Stanton University's main offices are in Anaheim. You have the Anaheim Chamber of Commerce that serves the businesses in Anaheim. And then, of course, you also have international NGOs that operate across multiple countries. And an example of that would be something like the International Red Cross, which most people are familiar with, and they also provide medical services in times of crises. Okay. So NGOs, they frequently receive government grants. Sometimes they rely on funding from the general public. Sometimes they receive money from public charities. But what's important is that they often work with government agencies in public-private partnerships. And in doing so, they influence policy, they deliver services, they foster civic participation and engagement, right? They sometimes directly inform municipal, state, and even national governance, right? So NGOs are really, they're a critical third sector partner that, they fill in the gaps where government resources oftentimes fall a little bit short, right? So, I mean, that's basically it. It's all about how do you get all these different, how do you herd cats, right? How do you get all these different disparate um, entities within the government and outside of the government together to achieve the goals that they're setting out to do. And that is essentially what this week is all about. So have a fantastic week. I look forward to reading discussion forum posts and any writing assignments pertaining to this. I'll be seeing you again next week.